All right. Welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of our community Q&A. My name is Saed and this is Mr. Ed Haynes. And today we'll be discussing the topic of longevity. And what do you want to talk about with regards to longevity?
I think within longevity there are so many different pieces, and this will probably end up being a series in itself, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
But longevity is definitely a word we use a lot.
Absolutely.
At Coastal Fitness Performance Training with all of our clients, everyone who comes on with us, and definitely within our coaching and staffing team. So I think within the topic of longevity, I'd like to probably talk about or address the idea of stress management, something that's very prevalent for everyone who is living these days. And I guess it's direct application to training and how we can manage and understand stress more to allow us to get it more out of our training.
That's awesome. Let's delve into it.
Let's do that.
Good. So I remember you speaking about a term that you frequently use, and which is adaptation currency with regards to stress.
Yeah, so it's actually, I've adopted it from actually my coach Kyle at Training Think Tank, and I think it's a really great analogy to explain the idea of stress. And I think at the end of the day, when we're talking about stress, especially relevant to the training room. So basically everyone who's coming in here every day, every week, whether it's group class training, it's personal training, it's iTrain coaching, whatever it is, essentially we're putting in time and energy into something with the hope that we're going to have a positive reward from it. Now, that can be a podcast in itself, talking about the effect of things like endorphins and dopamine and that good feeling from training. But I guess what we're speaking about specifically here is positively adapting from the training stress so that we're becoming stronger, we're increasing bone density, we're creating stronger ligaments, we're becoming fitter, stronger, faster, more powerful, all those kind of good things that we see as a result from training. So the whole idea of adaptation currency is that if we were just to look at training, just isolate it by itself. Let's imagine we have our lives set up where the only thing we have in our day is to basically wake up, eat, train, and sleep in an ideal world.
Yeah.
So really when we look at that kind of scenario, the only impact of stress on our day could potentially be poor quality of sleep, but it's really the training stress that we put on our bodies. So it's really, really simple. And if we want to positively adapt to the training stress, we have to understand, I can kind of paint the picture this way, is that we have 100 points of credit to use. So if we use up 80 points of credit for training, so when I talk about training, I'm talking about the stress of like grinding through repetitions or working really hard on the Metcon or whatever it is that you're trying to induce. We know that we have to push our bodies outside of a comfort zone in order for us to adapt from that. If we play it safe the whole time and don't challenge ourselves, we're not going to entice adaptation and actually get anything from the training. So I think if we can all agree on that to start with. So if we have 100 points of adaptation credit to use, we know that if we can, let's say, expend 80 of those credits to really hard training in a day, that leaves us with 20 spare credits to use. Now that 20 spare credits is enough to allow our body to recover from that 80 credits of stimulus and stress to positively adapt from our training. So we're ending up with a surplus of 20 points of adaptation credit. Good stuff. Now let's paint a scenario where let's refer to the idea of doing too much in the training room or overtraining. So we have 100 points of credit and we smash ourselves and we smash ourselves and we smash ourselves in a day of training, and we end up using 110 credits of our available 100. What's going to happen now? We're now going to negatively adapt. We're not going to positively adapt and get all that good stuff. We've actually ended up doing too much that we can no longer recover from it, and either we don't get the likely adaptations that we want, or we end up, unfortunately, probably getting injured and burnt out.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of scenario when we talk about adaptation credits. Now, we've just used a really, really simple example whereby there is no other stresses impacting our day other than training. Now let's talk about real life for a second and get real with kind of everyone who's involved with us here in this gym. Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no one the only one stress they have to really think about is training stress. Yeah. So some of the other stresses that we have and pardon ourselves are
work, relationships,
work stress, relationship stress, the environment, heat, cold, pollution, being around cigarettes, alcohol, sleep deprivation, money, finances, losing your job, getting married, moving house. I mean, there are all sorts of things that are constantly impacting our daily lives. I mean, even if those all seem a little bit too extreme and they're not relatable for you, you sitting at your desk and working your ass off for 12 hours a day where you're constantly turned on and sympathetically driven and kind of putting all this energy into this one thing, that is still stress. Now, stress can manifest itself in many, many different ways. It can be kind of what we're referring to, which is probably negative stresses, like things like fear, anxiety, like exposure to the temperature, being around sick people or viruses. Those are all kind of negative stresses that impact our body. And I think when people think about the term stress, that's what they think about more.
Yeah.
Meeting a deadline, potentially getting fired. But also we can apply the concept of stress to things that perhaps aren't necessarily seen in a negative light. So things like excitement, things like getting pumped up or fired up for something.
I've never thought about that.
Think about, like, you're really excited, you're about to do this big public talk in front of a lot of people that you've prepared 1 year for, and as you're getting up stage you have like the butterflies, but you also have like this feel of excitement where the tissue temperature increases, your blood's boiling, your vision's going a bit blurry, you can't really feel your hands, you can't really feel your sweat. All those kind of things are still absorbed by the body as stress. We just can't differentiate between what the type of stress, what the stress input is. So let's go back to our idea of our 100 points of adaptation credit now. Now let's say our goal in the gym is that we're training it in the gym 5 days a week. And the goal of the training sessions is that we want to come out of those 5 days of training a stronger, faster, more powerful, healthier individual. And I think that the concept of being healthy from training is really funny, because we're only healthy when we train and we can recover and adapt. Another way to look at it is if you're training and you're not recovering, so therefore we're using too many adaptation credits, and you're not recovering and you're not adapting, training is actually unhealthy. Training actually then gets put in the same basket as your work stress, your deadline stress, your overexcitement, your over anxiety, all those kind of things. Training just becomes one of those other stressors that's negatively impacting your life. So application then is, all right, so we have a typical day, and in a typical day we've been exposed to, let's say, 10 different stresses, and every time one of these stresses impacts your day, you're losing a bit of adaptation currency. A little bit of adaptation currency is going towards you that day. So let's say we're training at nighttime now, and we've had a big stressful day at work. We've had a meeting with our boss. Yeah. But before that, our wife shouted at us. We walked through the door because we didn't take the laundry out and we didn't clean the rubbish bins. So we're already kind of starting our day off in a negative light. Get to work, boss shouts at us. We have a couple of deadlines. We missed them, and therefore we're under the cosh a little bit. We're wondering if we're going to lose our job. And then we go for lunchtime, and it's really hot outside, so you're sweating, you're walking, and you realise you've lost track of time, and therefore you're rushing back to your office. You're sprinting. You're not letting your food digest. You get back to your office, and all this repeats itself. And then suddenly 6 p.m. comes around, and it's time to train. And we're going to the gym with the goal of trying to do something good for our bodies. Yeah. Like, we want to go to the gym and train hard because we want to be stronger, healthier people. But by the time we got to the gym, how many credits have we used?
So many. We
probably used a good 60, 70, 80, 90% of our adaptation credits. So we're coming into the gym and we're feeling tired, we're feeling exhausted, but like we made this commitment, this habitual commitment where we want to get to the gym every day and train hard because it's good for us and we want to be healthier. In actual fact, what's happening when you put yourself through that really hard training session? You're using those last available 10 credits that you had, you're putting 50 of those towards that training. And you're pushing your hard training because you think it's good for you, but really what's happening is you've had those 10 remaining credits and you put 50 towards tonight's training session, you're now in a deficit of 40. Are we going to positively adapt from that? No, we're in a deficit. Right, so in fact, it's not just a training stress that we need to think about, but we need to take more of a macro kind of bird's eye view on our lives to really dictate, okay, with all these things going on in my life, what do I have available for the things I can control? Because those first 90 credits we talked about, we probably don't have any control over. We can't control what our boss is going to say to us. We can't control a lot of the time how we're going to sleep at night. There are things that we can do to do that. We can't control the environment. We can't control how many sick people are around us. There's a lot of things that are beyond our control that are going to start eating away at our adaptation credits. There are some things that we definitely can control, and I think this series of podcasts will probably get into those, but that's definitely one of those things is the first thing, which is what this is about, is just understanding the concept. Yeah. So, the application to real life, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, is there stuff that people could do that could increase their credit or their resilience with regards to stress?
Yeah, well, I think the term resilience is probably a podcast in itself,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of resilience is like your natural grit that a lot of people are born with.
Yeah.
And naturally resilient people are just going to have, essentially, they're going to have more adaptation credit available. So whereas I might have 100 adaptation credits, you being a genetically more gifted person than me who can handle more, who has high levels of resiliency, you might have 120 credits, and we might have someone like Haynes and Alex Younger who have 150 credits. So therefore, for them to get into a stage of negative adaptations, they can handle so much more, which is why this is such a case-dependent thing, right? But I think in terms of, the draw-away message here is that when it comes to training, you have to understand kind of where you're currently at with regard to those adaptation credits. So nothing is perfect. And obviously, if we were to set up the world in a perfect environment where training was really just good for us, then of course we would just get rid of every other stress in our day and we would just focus on training. But unfortunately, that's not realistic. So like, what do we do? What do we do if we've had a really tough day of work? We've had a really stressful day, we've had a bad night's sleep, and maybe this has been happening for 2, 3, 4, 5 days now. And it's Monday now and you want to go to the gym and you want to train hard. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Are you going to train hard because the coach said so? Are you going to train hard because it's written up on a whiteboard or on a television screen and today's workout is asking you to go for a 1 rep max and then crush yourself for 6 minutes? I think that's where the application of these concepts becomes really important, and you have to take individual responsibility and ownership for your actions on that day. So that means, okay, actually I'm not going to go for a 1 rep max today. I'm just going to focus on moving for quality, perhaps. I'm going to keep my loads maybe 50% than what I'm actually capable of doing, and just make sure like my patterns are really good. In the Metcon, I still want to do it. I still want to be around my friends and my colleagues and in the environment, training, but I'm not going to put the pedal to the metal today. I'm just going to kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit and just move around, breathe a little bit, sweat a little bit, make sure I execute all my reps perfectly, and that's going to be my objective today. So really what we haven't done, we've taken the same stimulus, we haven't told ourselves that we probably shouldn't go to the gym today, but we're just going to be a bit more mindful in terms of our approach, because at the end of the day, we are doing this to be healthy, and to be healthy, we've got to be smart about how we use those credits.
Boom. To be continued, yeah?
Yeah,
There's
to be
so
continued.
much
I think,
more.
sorry, maybe just one last thing
recap.
to add on that is that I think potentially what this conversation to do is people are going to start to ask themselves questions every day as to how many credits they've used, and that's obviously it's a hard thing to do. Yeah,
by itself.
It's a good. I think it's a good question to ask, but in terms of really how much do you have left, it's very subjective. Yeah. So I think like general things. I mean, like what would you say to your client if someone said like, how do I know if I'm doing too much, or how do I know if I'm overreaching? Yeah. What are some kind of like telltale things that you asked them to look out for to make sure that they were still, in a healthy zone where they perhaps had adaptation currency to use?
Definitely, if the client is recovering from session to session, and telltale signs like hunger, how you sleep, your mood, these type of physiological
sex drive,
yeah,
like readiness and willingness to train. Yeah. I think all those things are kind of, I guess like niggles and injuries. Like if you suddenly start feeling like your joints are all hurt and your muscles are hurting, like you can't hit great movement patterns anymore. I think all those things that you just mentioned are telltale signs that perhaps it's time you just dialed it back a little bit. And dialing it back doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop training, but you need to start to take control of it. And I think in our next series of podcasts, we'll talk about how to better take control of things that we can control, like sleep, like nutrition, like our training, like just a mindset to life. Are you a glass half full type of guy or girl, or are you a glass half empty type of guy or girl? And I think even perspective on life can have such a profound impact on just like on everything, on just like your general like the way that your body absorbs stress. If everything is like bad and it's stressful and you're afraid of it, it's going to have a much more impactful hit on you. Whether if you just kind of like you take everything with a pinch of salt and like you understand it's part of life, and if you can understand that and come up with means to deal with it, solutions to deal with it, then you're going to be all right. It's not the end of the world. We are built to handle stress. If you think about us in our cavemen days, like we'd run out of our cave and get chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and at the same time we haven't eaten for 4 days, and like it's not like this is suddenly a revolutionary thing. No. It's just now that this is just so much more prevailing because we're just busier people. We're sleeping less than we used to. Our days are occupied with way more activities.
Mm-hmm.
We have our hands in
So
1,000 different jars.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just becoming a bit more profound. And I think all the studies on, you know, mental health and mindfulness and meditation is just bringing all these ideas kind of to the public through the media channels that people are just starting to think about it more, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, this is an environment that we definitely can control. We can control the training that we do, how hard we go, you know, how we apply ourselves in our day of training. And if we just ignore these kind of signals, then unfortunately this idea of longevity, which we've talked about, it's not going to happen. Like, we want you doing this in your 50s and your 60s and your 70s and your 80s and your 90s with your grandchildren, with your great-great-grandchildren. And if you ignore those things now at a younger age, like, it's only going to manifest itself somewhere negatively down the line.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to the next series with regards to longevity and the applications of adapting to stress, on what we can do about it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Saed. Good
See you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and please hit the subscribe button and thumbs up.